Hello, Divine Messengers. Welcome to this episode with Will Weyer and myself. We'll be jumping into conversation on taking off from where we had started. It's been 3 years since our last conversation, and I can't wait for you to tune in to what we have discovered throughout our time apart. And now we're touching base to share with you what we have discovered.
But I kind of, you know what I mean? Like I kind of had my story threading. I kind of felt the things, the past that I needed to follow, and you were part of that. And then when you went to Egypt, and it seemed like light bulbs went off all over the place. So I'm super interested to hear that story from you and how those two things connect, because I do feel like every time I've been there, I've been shown these things in subtle form, in a way of an intention per se, but that I can always kind of feel when we're about to connect another link, So yeah.
Isn't that interesting, right? The last time you had been in Egypt, I was a receptionist and I heard
Mhm.
Alpha and Omega, and then you just had discovered that with Robert Ebel Grant, and you were creating. I'd love to actually get you just to have an introduction about what you've been working on, just so we can when I have this out and everyone wants to tune into your work. So, Will, please just tell us about you and what you've been doing and how I guess we've been speaking and where we're at now.
Well, yeah, my name's Will Weyer. I'm a multi-disciplinary artist, kind of just a creator and dreamer. That's kind of where I like to be, is just on that facet of kind of understanding story and finding ways to either visually express it or some way to catalog something to make an important mark on things. So I guess what I've been doing recently, or for the past few years or whatever it's been, I've been working closely with Robert Everett Grant. We've been traveling all over the world, kind of digging into the depths of the pyramids, the mathematics, the geometry, everything that's spoken there for us as a record. That's kind of been a real driver for me, intermixed with all the other normal work stuff and client things. But, I've been heavily into trying to surface and make sense of all these great mysteries that seem to confound us, but they all have a very simple seed. You know what I mean? There's a very simple solution to where all the chaos becomes chaos, right? So you can get back to that quiet place, that place of balance. There's a way to start, really soaking into and up leveling the understanding of what we are, what we're doing here. So I don't know if that's an answer to what I've been doing or not. I don't know. You could ask me something
Definitely,
else.
definitely, because what Will's been doing is I've I've followed what Will has worked on because somehow the universe, God actually got us connected and was just being drawn to what you were creating at the time. And tell everyone what you actually called your device, the very first one that you made.
Okay, yeah. So the way we first linked up was I created something that I named the polyscope. And so poly means many, and scope means vision or lens, something to look through per se. So many lenses.
Mm.
And this was a device that I call it a device because I do feel like it does have a function to it. It's not just an art piece, but there's a placement and an arrangement and a movement to this thing. And hopefully we can show some images of it and things like that. But this was something that was cataloging the discoveries that Robert Grant was making as he was making them. And there was sort of some flash forward, some flashback of I knew what certain things were supposed to be, but they weren't even conjured yet. And then when they were, I knew that was the thing I needed so I could lock it in and continue that art piece. So this thing became a catalog of discovery. And there's definitely a function to it. Like we said, there's a puzzle, there's a mystery based within, and there's also just a deep intention put into it as a piece of artwork that could really move us forward. So I think
Yes.
that was you found me from that because you saw it and had we can let you kind of explain your experience to it, but I remember your message to me and I felt that engagement of like, okay, she really got this on that deeper level of, that kind of mystery blur that's supposed to be in it that only certain people are going to see the clarity, on instant, and others are going to take years to wade into it.
Thank you, Will. I mean, when I saw it, I just knew that you created God's blueprint. It was like the codes, the all the amalgamations of what we see and how we calculate things and what the actual device which you'll show, the polyscope, showed all the things that I was researching, and it was the divine principle of from the macro into the microcosm, and it was a code
Yeah.
that was being deciphered, and that's what you were getting to, from Leonardo da Vinci, and the measurements that you were putting in to the DNA structure even of a human. The movement of itself was kind of like a flowering and an unfolding,
Right.
and I think
Hmm.
that's what you were
Yeah.
doing, and it's like, wow, how did he even do that? Like, where did that come from? And during that time I was like hearing a voice that was audible, that was saying, okay, look at the heart. How does the heart work? Know thyself, human. What is Hugh? What are you? And it's like, am I going crazy? But actually it was just, God speaking to us for us to unfold the next phases of our lives to where we are today. I think this is no
Mm.
coincidence. And so
Yeah, that's beautiful.
um that's literally what I feel it is. It's like we've come to another point now of some other revelations that are being birthed. And people like Ron Wyatt, which I'm sure you've heard of, and he was a guy who went and found the Holy Grail, but only very recently it's resurfaced. And he had found it in 1981, I think. And I know that Larry has actually knew him, and they were good friends. So there's a lot of
Oh, really?
revelation
Okay.
happening at the moment, which
Wow.
we can look at. I can put links at the bottom and of your work and some of the revelations that are linked to this discussion. So I want to just jump straight in with what I wanted
Mhm.
to show you. I went to the Great Pyramid November the 3rd, and I had done a lot of prayer work in the Great Pyramid, following a book that I put together, which is something that I was guided to do, which is this little book here. And inside it,
Okay.
there's prayers to clear the energy inside the pyramid, to ask permission to be in there. And because I know that, is it Napoleon had a very strange experience
Hmm.
inside the Great Pyramid. And so
He had a strange experience inside that, and then he went on to create a mathematical theorem right after visiting that,
I did not
after
know
that
that.
experience.
I did not know that.
Yep.
Wow.
Pretty amazing.
Okay. So this is something that my friend Anna had experienced, mathematical, that was given to her. So then we went in there with prayer. We asked to bring heaven on earth. We sanctified the place to be removed of anything that is stagnant. We asked for our hearts to be accepted and for whatever to be ordained for us to see, we will see and experience. And then I ran through a whole amalgamation of sound attunements, with it follow through with resonance and tuning with Anna in the coffer for a little while. I did some attunement with her, which was coming through.
Mhm.
And then her husband, he went in, he had his turn. Then I had my turn. And then we wrapped everything up, went into the hotel, and then enjoyed the rest of our stay. But when I got home to the UK, the that night I laid in bed and I was given like a few really interesting experiences, which were based on how to bring heaven on earth. And then I was shown like it was almost like a three-dimensional graphic of instruction of how you will move through this reality and transform your life literally in 3 weeks. It was given to me like a course. And
Mm.
there were certain keys in there. It was certain keys was act, resonate, connect. And the fourth is the transformation that takes place.
Yes.
And it was very much like the flow from 3 a.m., which was basically a breakdown of how you will do these good deeds and how that will impact the person that you're doing the good deeds to, and how that impacts you metaphysically, mentally,
Mm.
even in your spiritual growth. You know, from depression will deplete, from shyness will deplete, because you're putting yourself out there to do good deeds. You can't
Mhm.
not do good deeds for someone, right? It's a
Right.
very simple thing. One of them is
Yeah.
even,
He who is filled with love must be filled with love in order to show love, right? It's that because you have to be in it and full of it and let go of everything else to really be deeply giving, right? Because it's that
wow,
selfless thing that is so key to that.
wow. I think that's what it was. That in itself, I wouldn't have put that correlation together actually, but that what you've said is really key. So basically, when we're in this resonance, how we are basically, uh, when we culminate this heavenly essence within us, that's how we truly match the heavens above us, because that's where they're
Mhm.
at. And then from that, it took me into another place of how you're going to work through forgiveness. And it showed me the process that you're going to take. And even if it's very uncomfortable, your forgiveness will transmute the other person's anger and animosity to you, whether whatever's going on a spiritual level, there has to be this huge part of forgiveness that will also give you the vibration of heaven, because there is no resentment or animosity or this unforgiveness. That's one of the other major things that prevent us from actually experiencing true bliss. And then I laid in bed, went through the whole thing as if I did the course myself. I laid in bed and my whole body's going woo, 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 woo. And I'm like, oh gosh. And my heart's just like glowing. And I
Yeah.
was thinking, wow, what is this? What is this? And then I heard, this is what heaven feels like. So when we get to go to heaven, we will know that we will be feeling this euphoria and constant love that is imbuing out of us uncontrollably. And so that was my experience from after going into the Great Pyramid of Giza. And the most
Yeah.
important thing is during the prayers, the specific things we had prayed for had been shown to me.
hmm That's incredible. That's incredible. Let me ask you this. When you were in the coffer, did you
Mm.
also feel that feeling or the pressure, like the ceiling was moving? Because
Mm-mm.
the way you explained what you felt after when you laid in bed, that's what that coffer does when it's toned at the right frequency. You'll actually feel like the ceiling is vibrating above you and it goes woo, woo, woo. Your chest, you feel it in your chest. So it's very interesting that you felt that after, almost like a tethered experience to what that probably was in that room. That's really interesting.
Is that what you experienced? Where did you,
Absolutely, yeah. Because
wow.
the time there's been, I mean, I've been there several times, but the one that moved the most, let's put it that way, was when Robert was there and Robert was tuning. So he's just leaning over the edge of the coffer and
Mm.
just very low hum. It's not loud. It doesn't need to be loud. And it's just enough that it makes that box resonate with the room in the way that it should. And you just start to feel this pressure. And that's kind of when people say they find visions or they are whatever it may be. For me, it was just more of an analytical, like, oh my goodness, right? It was a felt thing. The room was doing it, right? It was resonating, that was happening. And it's just one of those things. Exactly how you explained it is how
Wow.
it feels in the box. So it's almost like you had asked for those things, and then back there when you got them, it was delivering in that tonality or wavelength, maybe, right?
Yeah, that 100%, definitely the
Yeah.
wavelength. And I think, did you feel anything afterwards or was it during that time?
No, for me, I think we talked about this when we last had a video conference, but I was saying, and I've said this to everybody when I traveled there, for me, the experience of Egypt happens in a saturated way after I'm back, after I'm removed from it. Because like when I'm there, I'm just sort of, flow state of just understanding, oh, these experiences are happening, right? But they aren't so crystalline, I guess. And then when I go back and have time for that reflection to happen, just as you did, it just surfaces like a wave, just right? Like it just, all these things. I don't know what it is. It's like it's
Mm,
organizing you the whole time. And then when
right,
your mind is ready and relaxed, you can engage in that path line of information that came through. And it's up
oh,
to us, that's our soul
mm,
uh, pathway, I guess, is like whatever that's going to come through. It's like who you are at that time and who we are in this time right now. You're going to pick up these little parts, right? It's going to be
right.
different for everyone. because we're all
Right.
so uniquely that way. Yeah,
Beautifully put. I think, Will, I'm glad you shared that again. I just wanted to ask you just so you could share that again, because for me it was afterwards. And I think for I was in service during that time. I was really like holding the space, running the experience for a couple,
sure.
and I couldn't really go into the seat of receiving. It was just I'm just going into to the point of giving and going through the motions of what I had planned. But one thing
Yeah.
that I had experienced also whilst I was there, we called in the Holy Spirit. And once we called in the Holy Spirit, this is when my friend Anna had experienced a whole form of cleansing of the mind. I'm sure she'll share someday. I'll leave that for her to go into. And her
Great.
husband as well, he had a heart opening experience that the next day he was just like a child. It was incredible. For me, it was afterwards. It's like the our DNA had received everything within that place, and it was weaving all the pieces,
Yeah.
and then
Organizing somehow. Yeah.
and I think that's why your work has really, really materialized from that as well. I think there's some kind of initiation that happens, and your
Yeah.
heart's in the right place. You have such a beautiful heart, Will. Not only are you just a
Thank you.
creative and artistic human being, but you're a beautiful soul, like really.
Thank you very much. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what's important about the voice that we have, with ourselves and with each other. And if there's a way to leave something that can kind of pass something of that on, it needs to be true, and it needs to be, the intent has to be baked into it for something that,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? There's just something really beautiful about the intricacy of what artwork can be and the simplicity of what it can be, right?
Right.
Because it's all about how it affects the other, whoever's taking it in. So it's like this thing you cast behind, and your job is done, but how it's going to affect people as it goes down this road. It's just I've really enjoyed that as I've gotten deeper into understanding what it is I'm doing, right? Like, the Buddha in me laughs a little at that, because the best thing to do is to never know what you're doing, right? So,
Mm.
but if we can channel that and make our way and leave little markers along that pathway, I think that's important, because it speaks to a volume of what the heart wants. And when it sees perfection, or it sees beauty, or it sees sorrow or heartbreak or tragedy, these are codes too, right? These are things that are reactionary on visceral levels for just who we are. So
Right.
that's the music we can play with each
Right.
other as well, right? It's an emotional bond, to experience and really give yourself into a piece of artwork and receive that artwork as well. And that's how I see the Great Pyramid. Think of what that building is, right? Everything that it stands for, quite literally in physical form, is a storybook. It's a symphony. It's all those things in one. It's just a beautiful spectacle of actual brilliance laid on the earth, right? It's representing the
Mm-hmm.
speed of light. It's giving us all these angles and like understanding of mathematics and the grid nation layers of all these things of flower of life and all this stuff that can come together, but in this simple, most enormous building, right? It's simple, but it's so the enormity of it is just it puts you in another place. I think that's what's so wonderful. I'm glad you finally got to go there, because there's something to it standing in its presence to say, okay, there's something
Mm-hmm.
epic that's going to happen here, right? No
Mm-hmm.
matter what year or sand of time I'm standing on in that space, it's going to be amazing, because something like that is just what a gift.
Yes, truly. Thank you. I love how you sum that up. I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you so much, Will. And
Sure,
on that, we'll go on to the share. Um,
sure.
okay, so the
Mhm.
heart and sacred architecture of the Great Pyramid. I put this thesis as something, my thesis. I'm sure many others. So 20th of the 11th, 2024. Not long basically after I got back from Egypt. I got back from Egypt, but on the 8th, 3 a.m., I was given the insight to take note of the Great Pyramids and that have been made from the king's chamber outwardly, built from the smallest cubit to the dimensions of the whole structure. So I was given this and I was told it's built from the inside out, And then I was being shown something about the heart, the human heart, kind of how the human heart works. So then I was like, okay, what do I do next? Let's dig in. The human growth in the womb, order of organs are the heart and the major blood vessels. They develop early. At about 16 days after fertilization, the heart begins to pump fluid, then blood through the blood vessels at about 5 weeks and 3 weeks after fertilization. So then I thought, of course, the baby's heart starts to beat. It is the first thing, it is the temple, it is from within, and outwardly we grow. And that was something that I understood, but then I wanted to go in deeper. And feel free just to hand up and just say, hey, I want to share something.
Sure. Okay.
So the ratio of the human heart to the size of a human body can be understood in terms of volume, weight, or general proportion. The temple's core is central, and all things are built around that. Like the Great Pyramid, the inner temple houses the heart. After Paul says, sanctify you completely, he goes on to tell us what is meant by Holy Spirit, soul, and body. The order in which these parts are mentioned indicates that God works from the inside out, beginning with the Spirit. When we are born again, the Holy Spirit comes to live in our spirits. Actually, we are wall-to-wall spirits which have a soul and live in the body. The heart in biblical symbolism. The heart in the biblical terms in the Bible represents the center of a person's being. So I was like, okay, this makes sense. So the king's chamber is in the center pretty much of the pyramid.
Just offset from center, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So that it's like the heart is off center, just
Yeah,
like
just right. Exactly. So you can get that vortex around.
yeah. I put here Proverbs 4:3. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Ezekiel 36:26. I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. So from our experiences, every time we've gone into the heart of the king's chamber and the pyramid, we have received a new form of spirit, an awareness of sorts. While the physical dimensions of the heart are not explicitly mentioned, its significance aligns with the divine measurements, implying that the heart was seen as proportional to one's spiritual life and relationship with God. So here I've gone into my friend's vision, Anna. She had a vision of the tetragrammaton. I'll get into the image there, and she said it was showing her the ins and outs of how this tetragrammaton works and the meaning of it and behind the pyramids. The tetragrammaton refers to the 4 Hebrew letters YH, WH, representing the ineffable name of God in the Bible. It is considered sacred in Jewish mysticism and symbolizes the essence of divine creation. So you can see that basically the tetrakeys and the tetragrammaton, sacred geometry and creation, pretty much is what it looks like. So after her vision, my research unfolds the below. The tetrakeys, a triangular figure made of 10 points arranged in 4 rows, 1, 2, 3, 4 equals 10, was central to the philosophy of Pythagoras and Pythagoreans. It is a symbol of the cosmic order and foundation of creation. So if you think about the pyramid, it seems to be almost like a foundation of creation, right?
Absolutely. I want to make a comment too,
Go for it.
because that word there, I've always heard it pronounced tetractys, and you are calling it tetrakeys, which is fucking awesome, because that little T just needs another little and it'd be an E, right? So it is tetrakeys, but I've never heard it pronounced that way. It's always been tetractys, but I like that better, especially for this conversation we're having, because it's all going to center around these keys. This is the push, right? This is the filling up of information into what these keys need to be for them to take place and do something. That's what this is. It's so clear.
Wow, thank you for actually bringing that to light. This is why I love our chats. This is what happens. Magic happens.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. I really, because now I see it, you know what I mean? Like when somebody says something like that, you see it differently. Dang, I'm getting like my hair standing up on my arm now. Ah,
And that's
it's so,
crazy.
the game we play, and it's just
Wow.
so strange because no matter how deeply I know I've felt this before and walked these steps, even, we're blanked out for a reason, and then we rerun them again, almost like
Mm.
deja vu, right? Because we're
Right.
meant to. But that you have to clear this path in a way too of like you kind of have to forget how focused you are on it for it to occur,
Right.
right? It's again, it's that I'm letting go of not being
Mm.
so upon it to try and control
Mm.
it, but
Hmm.
let it be what it is.
Right,
That
right.
there's importance to that.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly what happened between, you and me. First row represents the monad, the singular source or unity. The second row you'll see represents duality, polarity, the balance of opposites, male, female, light, dark. Third row represents the triad, harmony, synthesis, mind, body, spirit. Fourth row represents the tetrad or the material world, like the base
Mhm.
of the pyramid, the four elements, earth, air,
The
fire,
four
water.
corners. Yep.
Right, exactly. The sum 10 symbolizes perfection and the unity of creation. All right, tying it into divine order. This is what it looks like.
Hmm.
Okay. There's something more to this which I will share off camera, which is very significant too. Um, so what I was then looking at was, well, Yod Hey Vav Hey, right? The tetra keys is like it gives us the digits of the DNA. It's like God's saying, "This is in your DNA. I am God, and God is here." And there's some kind of divine order being shown in the pyramid in this particular uh, the symbolism and the fact that Anna had this vision given to her, right? So we're still trying to understand this on a larger
Hmm.
scale. So I broke it down even more because I like to try to go into deeper meaning. So I had another look. I said, so this one, number one, represents the point of creation or the seed of existence. So this is the seed of existence. Two represents a
Hmm.
breath of life or expansion. Vav, this is actually what it means, represents the connection or link line between heaven and earth, which is interesting.
Hmm.
Hey, the second, he completes the cycle, symbolizing the manifestation of divine creation in the material world. So there's two different terminologies, but I just wanted to just give you the best of the two.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. No, I've done a lot of research into that, obviously, and like a lot of my research in numerology and the Fibonacci sequence, it builds this structure. It builds the four corners of a pyramid and
Right, right,
shows you that there's an apex. So
right.
when we talk about Yod Hey Vav Hey as well, think of it as the breath. Think of it as the voice of the breath, but just even the breath, what
Mm-hmm.
that is. And when it
Mm-hmm.
talks about the line of divinity, is that what it is?
Yeah.
How you stated that? That's sort of that idea of like, are you silent or are you speaking? Are you
Mm-hmm.
creating or not? Right?
Right,
It's that
right.
thing of like just by speaking it, you are in creation. You are of creation because you're doing it. So that there's a deeper level to, I mean, everything in there is deep, right? Because it's supposed to be. It's so woven together, and that's what's so brilliant is there's just all these things that you can surface from such a simplistic place, but a powerful place.
Mm. What you just said, I just I'm learning to like learning the Bible a little bit, and I found that this is important for me. But once I had a vision the first night I got to Egypt, which I'll explain. With Jesus, he came to me, and the parable that came to mind when you're talking about the line is the line of creation, and we have to do something. There's a parable that talks about how God gave us gifts, and there was one that he gave 10 gifts to and he did something with, and there was one person that he gave one gift to, but he buried it and he
Mm.
did nothing with it. No seeds were grown. And I think towards the end, it was like, you didn't sow the seeds, like I gave you everything, and then there was a consequence of that. Like, yeah, work with the seeds that have been given to you to create.
Yes, that's very powerful, because that's how I feel each time I've left Egypt, is that there is something in that sort of mindscape of it that is either become more clear or comes to me, saturates and comes to me later, like as you're saying. But it is that idea of like, okay, if you're given something and you feel it's a piece of the puzzle that's in a positive state towards, whatever we're supposed to be reaching or clarifying together, then if you were to just bury it, right, it stops the entire storyline. And that's what it feels like, is like we're always given these gifts again and again and again and again, even throughout our own lifetime, if not multiple, right? But it's
Right.
just, did enough of us in a group, a small tribe, right, share those gifts together? Because I think it becomes that thing where when you do it individually, you can make change and make waves and that kind of thing. But when you find that team of others who are in that same light of what that purpose is, then that wave is huge, and it
Right.
really has a way to cycle. And
I got
that's
my
what we make
hairs
it.
standing on end when you said that. I
Yeah,
just felt like a wave.
yeah, because it's so simple, but it's hidden from us, like we just
Right.
said. It's the shell game of it all, because it's like, what it is here in your heart, but here you have to learn to speak this way, and then speak that way in action of the world that you're in. Well, that passage that you had just read, that line of creation and divinity, and whether
Yes.
we act upon it or not.
Right.
And I think I was just starting to wax poetic about that idea of letting go again, just knowing that even if you know the focus of what a task really is, it's almost like you have to be just divergent of it to truly get the most out of what that thing is for you,
Right.
if that makes any sense.
Yes.
Because the more you focus on trying to control, you're not going to get all of the little randomness and just beauty of what it could be had you let room for it to be so. So I think that's kind of just that small, I don't know. It's just a way of absorbing what it is you're doing, because
Right.
to know that it's okay and almost necessary to always be letting go and
Mm.
letting these things happen, right? Don't always feel like you have to be in the pole position of creation all the time. You're also part of a witness of it.
Yes, exactly. And that's what you said when you go away and then you come back in and everything changes. Your perspective changes. It's a whole
Mhm.
culmination of things that come about that
Sure, yeah.
bear fruit. Connection to the pyramid. So the triangular form of the tetraches mirror the shape of pyramids, particularly the Great Pyramid, which is often seen as a physical manifestation of divine mathematics. The four levels of the tetraches can correspond to the layers of the pyramid, for example, base to apex, or the spiritual ascent from the material world to unity with the divine. So I was thinking about that, and then I thought, well, let's look at the DNA, because Yahweh, people say when they breathe, the word, like you said, Yahweh, it's like a breath, right?
Mhm.
Explaining the DNA in Yod He Vav He, imagine DNA as a building blocks of life. It's like a recipe book that tells your body how to grow, function. DNA uses special ingredients called elements. So this is actually made of hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen. That's what we're made of. But
Mm.
also a few other elements. But that's what the tetrakeys stand for, Yahweh. And then if you look at the actual amalgamation of it on an alchemical structure, it's almost like it forms the letters of Yahweh,
Wow, yeah.
which is crazy enough. I'd love you to see what you come out with later on as this sort of manifests in your being.
Sure.
Energetic implications, the association of the tetrakeys and tetragrammaton with pyramids highlights: one, creation and divine order. Pyramids are seen as microcosms of the universe, where energy flows in alignment with sacred geometrical principles. Two, energy vortex. The pyramid's design channels energy upwards, just as the tetrakeys lead from multiplicity back to unity, and the tetragrammaton channels divine energy into creation. And I thought, well, I was trying to see what kind of images you could create with the heart being the temple of the Great Pyramid. Yahweh is the creator. And we'll go into more depths with that. And so I heard one day, everything is measured in cubits, something about cubits. It's like a voice was talking to me about cubits. I'm like, I don't know anything about cubits. But then it went back to the pyramids again. So more of these things were unfolding as I was living my life in the UK after the trip. Possible ratio interpretations. Ancient measurements like the cubit were tied to the human body, as the human form was viewed as a reflection of divine creation. Genesis 1-7. If we consider the human heart to be 1/4 or 1/5 of a cubit, about 4.5 or 5 inches in length, its small yet central size can symbolize how something seemingly minor can hold profound importance in life and faith. The heart and sacred architecture. In sacred architecture, like the Temple of Solomon, every measurement reflected perfection and purpose. The Holy of Holies, the most sacred space, could symbolically align with the human heart as the place where God resides within. 1 Corinthians 3:16. Do you not know that you are God's temple and that God's Spirit dwells in you? Numerology and symbolism. In biblical numerology, the heart size, reflective to the body, may symbolize divine proportion. The 4 chambers of the heart, 2 atria, 2 ventricles, could represent balance and completion, much like the cubits used in balance structures. The 12 to 13 centimeter length of the heart ties to the recurring biblical themes of 12 tribes, 12 apostles. Symbolic ratios. So the chamber's proportions align with the pyramid's overall design, emphasizing cosmic harmony. So I know the golden ratio is phi, which you know really, really well. Like you're a master of that, 1.618. And I would say people check out Will's stuff. It's incredible. The pyramid's dimension reflects this ratio believed to represent divine order. Height placement. The chamber's vertical positioning, where the Queen's Chamber, earthly spiritual awakening, King's Chamber, divine eternal. Interpretation. There are striking parallels between the ratios of the chambers within the Great Pyramid and the size and positioning of the human heart relative to the body. Now, this is a thesis, so I'm trying to find if it actually is a correlation. While the pyramids operates on a monumental scale and the human body is much smaller, both structures reflect principles of proportion, balance, and centrality. And so let's break it down. Human heart placement. The heart is located 1/3 from the top of the body, measuring from head to feet, much like the King's Chamber sits about 1/3 of the way up in the pyramid. The Queen's Chamber is positioned lower, reflecting its supportive but less dominant role to how smaller heart chambers work in coordination with the larger ventricles. So here, like I was looking at how air flows in the heart. Can you see what happens? So this is basically like a 2D view of a early filling vortex ring flow in the left ventricle, visualized as a pair of counter-rotating vortices left, using streamlines coded by velocity magnitude from red to blue, and then cardiac blood inflows in a swirling motion, forming what's called vortex flow pattern. In fact, blood inflow forms a pair of counter-rotating vortices. Both structures reflect the idea that something relatively small in scale, the heart or the chambers, play an essential role in sustaining or representing life. The mathematical harmony, both the pyramid and the human heart follow harmonic proportions. The golden ratio, so basically the pyramid's overall dimensions align with this ratio, symbolizing divine order. The spiral shape of blood flow within the heart's ventricles is also tied to the Fibonacci sequence, echoing divine proportion. Centrality, the heart is central to the human body, both anatomically and functionally, And the king's chamber is the central axis of the pyramid's spiritual and symbolic design. Just scaling down the pyramid to the body. So if the Great Pyramid was scaled down to match the size of the human body, the king's chamber could represent the heart's ventricles, life-giving and central. The queen's chamber could align with the atria, or supporting structures functioning as a subordinate yet crucial companion to the main chamber. I know there's other chambers in there that I didn't get a chance to go into. I'm like desperately trying to figure out why I'm being told that something is essential with the heart and the pyramid, you know.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, right? Because the more you study it and the more you look at the function of like that illustration of the pyramid, there is function there, right? And it's perfectly placed function amongst this much weight at this particular point on the planet, aligned to these stars, right? I mean, there's major, major stuff going on there. So when you start to reflect about that, you realize, okay, it's a temple, but it's a temple of purpose. What is its purpose? What are its mechanisms? What do they do? So if they are creating a flow of energy or timing or any of that kind of stuff, and like if you're looking at the heart as the central and the pump and those vortexes happening, let's think of that same way as the king's chamber, right? And it's like if the air, not the air, just the energy, the fields that are around it, if gravity is displaced in such a way because of the function of that perfection of void and solidity and the sounds that we can make to activate it or not, there's, you know what I mean? It's very clear that there's something going on, that everything is done in perfection. Everything has ratio in order to work, you know, in order to perform in the way that it's supposed to perform. And that's both in physical form, like we're seeing here in the pyramid and the body, but mentally too. And that again, it gives me that idea again of just off center. It's so important because if something's perfectly aligned to something else, nothing can happen. It's just perfect, right? But if it's just off center and you throw gravity through it, gravity is going to find a way to turn and become this bigger thing. So it releases action. And so to me, that's that idea of that divinity line too. It's like perfection is attained, but it's only a moment. And then you're past perfection. Your perfection, past it again. So you're always warbling through that idea of perfection. So the beauty of something that's just offset from perfect just means we're always going to keep going, right? We're always going to find that path, either forward or backward or some release of energy, right? So that to me is where it gets really interesting because, right, perfection is only something that feels like it can just be a breath. Because once it's there, no matter what state you're in, because the earth is spinning, we're flying through the galaxy, that perfection's gone, right? It's only going to be in these specific moments. And so realizing that and playing with that is kind of, I think that's where the whole game is, right? Because you can really get deep into understanding something and knowing the knowledge of something, but it's almost like the credit is you know enough to know what to forget in order to enjoy that thing. You know what I mean? Like somehow there's an unknowing that spices everything up, I think.
I love that, Will, how you explain that. It's like it just has to be slightly off center, and then you get the momentum going, and it's almost like a counterforce that builds. But if everyone was perfectly aligned, nothing would happen. Like in terms of like without that momentum.
Right. So there's an opening there, if you want to call it that, just by offsetting. And so we're built that way. That's why things can pump and keep circulating. The pyramid's doing a very similar thing in fashion of energetics, per se.
Right. Yes, beautifully said. I love that. Very visual. Energy flow of human heart and Great Pyramid. So let's explore these relationships. Fibonacci sequence, God's blueprint, measure of all life in the pyramid's design. The Great Pyramid of Giza exhibits proportions closely aligned with the Fibonacci sequence, a series where each number is the sum of two preceding numbers, which is what you were talking about just now. That's the offset, right? That builds and builds and builds.
Yeah. And the Fibonacci sequence is the sequence that's eventually getting closer and closer to being the expression of the golden ratio. So when we talk about the Fibonacci sequence, we're always inherently talking about it wrapping down and being the golden ratio too, because that's what those numbers are doing.
Right.
As that curve builds and the longer it has to build, the closer it gets to it, but it never
Right.
reaches it because of the offset. That's what's so brilliant is it's like you search for that perfection and you want to lock it together, but then everything would freeze. So having those
Mm,
offsets, whether it's one digit or like Fibonacci, where it's every other kind of like compounding, it
right.
just gives room to move. It gives
Very
room
cool.
for creation. Yeah.
Love that. Energy flow in the pyramids. The pyramid's design is believed to direct energy flow towards its apex, following a spiraling motion, which you said that mirrors the Fibonacci spiral. And like you mentioned, getting closer to the golden ratio. So this is consistent with how the golden ratio appears in vortex energy fields, such as those found in galaxies, seashells, and weather patterns. And I was looking at the human heart, Fibonacci in the human heart geometry and spiral flow. The human heart pumps blood in a spiral-like flow, as discovered by Dr. Francisco. The ventricles contract in a twisting motion, creating an energy vortex that maximizes efficiency. The left ventricle spiral muscle fibers guide blood in a helical motion, optimizing flow and reducing resistance. Vortex in the aortic valve. Blood existing in the heart through the aortic valve also forms a vortex, a shape often seen in nature that corresponds to the Fibonacci spiral. So everything is within this vortex, everything is constantly flowing.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
like
Even
as
even
within,
the
as
heart
without.
itself. Yeah, even the heart itself, the way it's shaped, it's actually flat. But the way it's in our body is it's
Ah,
twisted together to be this shape. And so if you unfold that, there's a spiral in that just by, right? It's
yeah,
curled
yeah.
over like that. So you can look that up. If you've ever seen a heart, they could take it out and unfold it. So it's literally the way it's put in, held, there's a spiral. So not only are the vortexes happening because of the pumping of energy, but just how it's doing it, the gripping of how it's built unfolds, right?
That's
So
incredible. That is
the
absolutely
whole
incredible.
yeah, it's so incredible because everything is in that same woven magic because
Right,
it has to do with ratio and throughput of energy
right,
and how you're directing that or saving it versus using it. Again, it's that thing of the voice. Are you
right,
speaking or are you silent?
right.
Yeah.
And you know what came to my mind when you were showing me the heart, how it kind of like does this? There's some plants that start off like that and then they unfold
Yeah.
the same
Yeah.
way we're built, like all plants and everything in
Yeah.
life. From the
Or
moment the
blooming.
heart pumps, is for me, I remember a couple of years ago, I think I shared this with you, it was like the Schumann resonance of the earth is humming. So everything is within that, the heart of the earth forms the heart of all life, which we live on. And then you have the mother who has her heart that holds the child, and the fetus relies on the mother almost. And then the fetus's heart starts to form. And then once that starts beating life, it forms in the shape of the beating of life that is all things.
Mm.
And I was like that. I remember having that sort of visual in my head. It was quite interesting.
Hmm.
Comparing energy flow in the pyramid and the heart. So I kind of put this little kind of comparison. So aspect energy flow, Great Pyramid, believed to direct cosmic or telluric energy to the apex. So the telluric, if those who don't know, it's the earth energy. It's like the ground level energy. It's like it's it's not too deep, but it's there. The earth is a battery, inevitably. Blood flow forms a Fibonacci spiral optimizing motion. So the human heart, blood flow forms a Fibonacci spiral optimizing motion. And then you have here believed to direct cosmic or telluric energy to the apex. So spiraling motion in both aspect, golden ratio proportions, Great Pyramid, base to height, and internal chamber ratios reflect phi. Human, spiral muscle alignment follows phi for efficiency. Spiral dynamics. Energy spiral converging upwards towards the apex. Blood flow spirals outward from the ventricles. Central role. King's chamber positioned at the pyramid's energetic core. The heart lies centrally sustaining life. I'm getting to the end of my little presentation, almost.
Mhm.
Unified symbolism, microcosm and macrocosm. The pyramid mirrors the cosmic order symbolized by the golden ratio and serves as a macrocosmic representation of the human heart's energetic principles. The heart functions on a microcosm of divine or universal blueprint of God's divine design, as seen as patterns, which is in the pyramid's design. Conclusion: both structures are rooted in the same blueprint of the creational measurements, which uses mathematical ratios like phi to express balance, harmony, and the flow of energy. This shared foundation emphasizes their interconnectedness. The energy flows within the Great Pyramid and the human heart both align with the Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio and tetragrammaton, reinforcing their shared connection to natural and divine order of God's design, also found in DNA helix spiral Yod Hey Vav Hey. I create like a little graphic here, trying to be artistic.
I like it.
Digital art there. This image illustrates the flow of energy and harmony between the two profound structures, highlighting their shared connectedness to the golden ratio. And here I was trying to find the connection with the heart and the chambers. You know, there might be more that you could probably look at, Will. I think there's something you can investigate maybe.
Sure. I know Robert's done some work on that, even Alan Green, system of the body compared to the pyramid. So that's the one I've kind of fell most in line with, just in a way of like, okay, we're built this way, energetically to rise up to do something at the peak. And the pyramid feels similar to that, right? There's a mechanism to it. And like we said, it all comes to an apex, whether it's dissipating or dampening the vibration of the planet, the actual tuning. That's been one of the things said about it too. It's still an idea of pulling that energy up, but it's because it's the idea of the Earth's crust is always shaking, right? So there's always vibration throughout the planet because of all the violent things that happen around the world, weather and otherwise. And so one of the theories is pyramids could be these dampening centers, meaning they take that extra vibration in the Earth and they're able to spiral it up and dissipate it so it's not harmful, less earthquakes, things of that nature, for people who are looking into that theorem of it at least. So interesting. Always interesting. A million different theories can be
You have to ask Larry because he has done a whole video on that.
Okay, good. Yes.
He's hidden it. Larry, get that video out there. That's all I have to say. So we'll speak to him about the measurements of all the chambers. He's actually he shared it with me because I guess I didn't bully him into it, but I think he felt that he needed to share it.
That cosmic charm was at work. But that's kind of the thing too, right? We're laughing about it, but it is just that kind of thing. Because I think each of us hold these little things that either we aren't ready to share, we feel like we need to know deeper before we stand behind it, right? But some of those things, some of those fragments are the things that you need, the things that Larry needs, the things that Robert has needed, Alan. You know what I mean? It's that's the purpose. I think when I look back and I see those steps that we take, it is that. It's just being given, and not in a way of an egotistical manner of knowing, but just inclinating.
Right.
Almost like your thought is your intention, and it's like, does this feel true to you? And you're almost searching for that counterpoint in another. And when you find that, then that connection can become real, right? So we are in a dream, and we are these dreamers. And if we can do that to each other, we're casting out half of a bridge, and that other person has to cast the other side in order for it to connect.
I love that.
Again, it's like neurons, right? It's just this thing of, you can think a certain way your entire life, and then one thing will change you, and that neuron will connect in a new way, and you'll think differently. And that's the beauty of living. Because if everything was to stay the same, yeah, and if we were just to stay the same and to stay striving for perfection, I think all this, the randomness and the beauty of chaos would be missed. So that's kind of part of our journey too, I think, is to take those hits, the emotional things that feel off target, because that shapes us each very uniquely, like a pebble in a stream, hitting
Right.
certain rocks. That thing's going to have a certain formation at the end of its journey that the others don't. And so when you ask that rock what its story, hopefully it's going to be a fucking good one because it's very unique.
And you know what? You said something earlier. When you say we'll all get together, it's like a gathering of people that come with all the different parts, and it just grows. And you said it wasn't about the one person, it's a culmination of all these things, and that's what it is. And I think
Yeah.
that's what has transpired, and is evidence to show that the more of that will give us will bless us with a lot more of the pieces, the net. You're constantly casting out that net, and
Mhm.
the line and catching the other person. I love that,
Yeah.
Will. Really
Yeah.
powerful analogy, that.
Oh, good. Yeah, I think about that a lot. It's one of those things that you realize that the journey is within. This
Mhm.
is a self journey, but it's experience with the self outwardly, because we're all each other, right? When we get to it, we know we're all this one source of consciousness, but we can interact with each other as well on this plane of the experience. So then you start to say, okay, well, if it's just me and I'm this shape, I can move fast this way and I can do this. But if I gather another piece with me and another shape and I build this bigger ship, this bigger thing, now my momentum can do what my smaller individual thing couldn't do.
Right.
So then you know what I mean? So you master within, you become small. And then you realize in order to build, you're building with yourself. You know what I mean? It's
Hmm.
not that it's other, it's the self in the other, which is you. So if you can understand and be amicable or creative or charismatic or positive or whatever it is that attracts those things you need, or negative and terrible, right? It works on the dark side too, right? It's that whole thing. And I think it's important to understand that yes, individuality is important, but also the idea of teamwork and
Teamwork.
caring for carrying humanity forward is way more powerful.
Oh yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Right? So that's the thing I try and impart with people, like in everything that I do. Like I try and stay in a positive attitude. I try and be that kind of light in a way because people can expect that and understand that it exists that way.
Right.
So for you to just act in that role, you're doing your part. You're doing that little bit of giving that's just enough to turn somebody's attitude or make them think a little differently or make them question something they hadn't thought of before
Mhm.
or have the the braveness to say, what do you think about this? Right? Without knowing it's true yet. Like
Right.
that's the place where we're powerful because
Yes.
not knowing is such power. Like you're so creative in that moment because nothing is the right answer. It could be
Right.
anything,
Right.
right?
We need that. Yeah, exactly. Beautifully said, Will. Really beautifully said.
Thank you.
So here, Jesus Christ, the Tetragrammaton, Great Pyramid. So in Christian theology, the Tetragrammaton is Yod He Vav He, has profound connection to Jesus Christ. The divine name, revelation in the Gospel of John, Jesus often uses the phrase "I am." Okay, also uses "I am who I am." I am the way, the truth, and the life. Yod He, breath. The
Mhm.
incarnation of the word in Christian belief, Jesus is the embodiment of the logos, of the word, which is linked to divine creation through the tetragrammaton. Because I'm trying to understand why that even came in. So the geometry and order seen in sacred symbols like the tetrakeys and the pyramids mirror the logos as the organizing principle of the universe. Numerology in Jesus' name, in Hebrew, the numerical value of the name Yeshua, Jesus, aligns with sacred numerology. Some mystics have noted, but I left that for more research. So
Mhm.
also there's more to it. There's Jesus in the heart and the Knights Templars. So the heart and Jesus Christ. Heart as a sacred symbol. Jesus is often depicted with a sacred heart, symbolizing his divine love, compassion, and connection to humanity. The Sacred Heart is surrounded by a crown of thorns, emits light representing his suffering, and the transformative power to which he died as payment for our sins, that no other sacrifice of blood is needed. I am the first and the last. The heart. The spiral flow of blood through the heart's ventricles and aortic valve mirrors the creational principle of the Creator's blueprint and golden ratio shown in the Last Supper painting that Leonardo da Vinci created. This sacred geometry reflects the divine order inherent in creation and is a metaphor for Christ's role as the spiritual center of the universe, or literally. Lastly, the Templars' knowledge, guardians of sacred knowledge. Now, I know that Larry had seen the Knights Templars above the symbol he saw, so I'd known about the Knights Templars and the whole thing with the Holy Grail, and I always was looking into different churches to see how many Knights Templars were showing up.
Yeah,
they were everywhere. Everywhere. Guardians of sacred knowledge, the Knights Templar are believed to have preserved esoteric knowledge about the Tetragrammaton, sacred geometry, and their connections to Christ. This included an understanding of the mystical properties of the heart, as well as the architectural wisdom used in structures like the Great Pyramid and found in the Living Word, the Bible, for these clues. So that's what I started doing as well. The Great Pyramid and Christ's blueprint. Some speculate that the Templars' fascination with the Great Pyramid stemmed from its alignment, location, and the divine principles as the cornerstone. It embodies principles also seen in Christ's teachings. Try to do a capital A, but didn't work out. Also, it has been linked to Job, who was said to help build the pyramid. Job 38:4. Where wast thou when I laid the foundations of the earth? Declare, if thou hast understanding. Who hath laid the measures thereof, if thou know it? Or who hath stretched the line upon it? Whereupon are the foundations thereof fastened? Or who laid the cornerstone thereof? Lastly, to add the fish symbol we have all seen. So when I was in Egypt, this is seen a lot. I did look up the name and the pronunciation, but I've forgotten how to say it. The Itchik or something symbol. And Jesus Christ seen in many Coptic churches. Early Christian symbolism. The fish was used as a sacred symbol among early Christians to identify themselves during the times of persecution. The Greek word ishith and theos eos soter, meaning Jesus Christ, Son of God, Savior. So there seems to be biblical connection. Jesus is often associated with fish. He called his disciples to be fishers of men. Matthew 4:19. He multiplied fish to feed the masses in the miracles of the loaves and fishes. Spiritual meaning. The fish symbolizes abundance, life, and spiritual nourishment, aligning with Christ's role as the giver of eternal life, as the vine in which he is, tree of life, primordial waters.
The fish symbol too is also representative of the vesica piscis.
Ah.
And that continuation of the tail of the fish, if you imagine it, all those little vesicas, they are the flower of life, the overlaps. So that next tail is just starting the next vesica. So it's almost the most simple way to say you understand that pattern without drawing the whole pattern of all the circles, right? It's like this piece and showing those two extensions shows that I know how to build the flower of life.
Wow.
And it was also another really cool thing is when people were greeting each other, they would draw an arch in the sand with their toe. And if the other person was of that same belief, they would finish the arch in the other direction, creating the fish. So that was a way to know you were of the same mindset or whatever it may be upon meeting in secret or whatever.
Very interesting. Wow. Wow.
Some really amazing stuff. I know Alan has educated me quite a lot on some of those steps and some of the things we've put into Robert's Codex TV show and things like that. I'll hit on these tones as well.
Please, yeah.
Really important. I mean, it's so because it's just such a mastermind of symbology and mathematics and the purity of what that means and what people are trying to say through these eons of time. And it's, you know what I mean? Because there's only so much truth that can make its way through permutation and war and chaos and who's telling the story. Whoever won writes it the way they want to write it. but there's some things unchanged. And that's the study that you and I are in, right? Because
Right.
it's those are the things that truly matter. Because if that's fractured and we know pieces of it, we can reconstruct the mirror.
Right.
It's a simple task because you just look through the reflections, but we need more of us looking that way.
I love that. Looking in the same direction, but we're all a piece of the puzzle.
Mhm.
That's beautiful,
Yeah.
Will. So here you'll see there's a scroll. This is the P. Oslo,
Okay.
INV 303, a manuscript from the 4th century that acted as a Christian amulet. It is written in Greek and was used as an invocation to ward off evil from the household. This type of written appeal was popular in Egypt throughout antiquity, funny enough, which is very interesting.
Mhm.
The inscriptions end with an alpha cross and omega symbol of Christ, and the word Ishis stands for fish. So you can
Mhm.
see that there, which is
Yeah.
there.
The the symbol the logo we created for the adventure travel expeditions with Robert is the Alpha Chi Omega.
Really?
Exactly that. So that the
Wow.
cross in the middle is called the Chi. It's the cross or the cross. So
Mm.
it's Alpha Chi Omega. And
Mm.
that's the symbol that we made and adopted for that because of its meaning, right? It's because that particular set is what we're finding everywhere. That's the logo imprint, if you will, that we're
Right.
finding from all these ancient sites in Brazil, in Egypt, in Mexico, right? So there's a carrier there of knowledge because that symbol itself, as you're depicting there, is carrying quite a lot of information with it.
Right.
Um, there's mathematics in it. There's balance. There's ratio to those things. There's another little symbol if you pull that thing back up that is a perfect Oak Island cross. Okay, so right after that red box of the Alpha Chi Omega, the very next symbol is a cross with a leaning
Oh, yeah.
circular. So they found this lead cross on Oak Island. I don't know if you're familiar with what's going on there, but they're searching for a Templar treasure, most likely. And this is a treasure search that's been going on for like 200 years, really complex flooding systems underground. The things they've found have been at like 90 feet, right? Like sacred numbers. All this stuff is cataloged together.
Wow.
Alan and I have spoken about this quite a bit. Robert too. There's some involvement there. Oh, you and I have spoken about this, about the Mi'kmaq. So
Yes.
you know. So
Yeah.
okay, so that was interesting because like you were depicting those two little things, but I immediately saw that little cross with the little head because
Thank
it's
you for
super
that.
unique. Yeah. So there, I'm interested to see what the rest of that scroll is about. I'll
I'll
look
show
that up
you.
here later after our call because I've just been so enthralled with that search. I feel a part of it. So
Mm.
it's one of those things I've been waiting almost for the right little key to snap into me to go take that forward. But
That's why we get together.
I know, because it's so there, and the mechanisms and the things of like what were built to protect this treasure, they feel epically important. You know what I mean? Like who would go to those lengths if it
Mm.
wasn't so important? So the
Right.
things that could be down there, saved and hidden, um, that's an epic quest there to bring to
That is
surface.
an epic quest. And look, there's the Knights Templars. I think it looks there. Even
Oh, I could see
one,
that
two,
too.
three,
Yeah.
four. I just didn't see that until now. You can see the one, two, three, four. It's like what you can see here. One, two, three, four, five. It's almost like the kind of the half of the wheel because the scroll has been cut. Alabaster
Mhm.
fragment from Villa Bintiliorum. Sounds
Whoa,
very
they,
Latin,
I think, yeah.
Rome. And you can see that the I, X, O, and the line, and the Y, and the
Mhm.
C. This is basically whether it's written on ancient papyrus, carved in stone, or seen on your Toyota's bumper. The Jesus
Yeah.
fish has been a lasting symbol that Christians have used for nearly 2 millennia. a way to remember and encapsulate ancient truths in a simple form. And then I just wanted to end it with Tetragrammaton and Jesus. Jesus uses I am, directly connects to the Tetragrammaton, the sacred name of God, as a logos. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of mankind. He is shown to embody the divine blueprint seen in the tetrarchies, the Great Pyramid, and the structure of the human heart, the Alpha and the Omega. Revelation 1:8. I am the Alpha and the Omega, says the Lord, who is and who was and who is to come, the Almighty. In the heart's design, echo the harmony of Christ's teachings, the perfect balance, compassion, and divine order. And that's what I wanted to share with you today.
Yeah, amazing. Amazing. Yeah, I'm always astounded by the connections that come through. And like we said, it always feels like these little puzzle pieces, and they're very timely because it's almost like we have to carry them for a while to be used to them and familiar
Right.
in order to offer them up to the next person.
Right.
Right. So I feel like that's what you and I have done because we connected so long ago in that blast. And ever since then, we've both been on our same treks, right? Like still searching, still putting things together, doing our deed of understanding that some of this we need to divulge and pass on, right? So that's what I've been heavy into and kind of working behind the scenes doing those things that I feel are super important, the biggest pillars I can be working on, but all the while still drifting, still understanding that we're all doing that same thing. So the magic is happening, it's effervescing as we do it, we are causing the rest of it to be done as well. Whereas if we do not, nothing happens, right? So it's that matter
Amen.
of yeah, are you ready to be in action or are you still staying in silence? And both are okay. It's a timing thing, right? It's that
Right.
thing of it's a birth and a blooming because as a seed you're compact and quiet, but as you grow and make that journey up into blooming, everything unfolds. You let go of that concreteness that you were, become something else.
As you just did that, I thought about the analogy of what you said, and to finish off our beautiful conversation, it's like we're like watering the soil, and we are like a season. We're like
Mm.
evolving with the seasons, which is what's given to us, and we're doing something with them. We're not quite sure where it's going to lead, but we know that we're going in that direction of what we're being pulled and followed to do. And then what you did with the emotion of growth, I think because it's rooted in the honesty, it's rooted in that
to the
genuine
Egyptian
wanting to
activation
understand, but also
mission of
helping
the
others to
saints
grow and
slumber.
culminate, putting it together.
Let's turn
It just becomes
pages
clearer,
one.
we are like puzzle
Prayers
pieces, Will.
on the entry of the
Yeah,
Great
we absolutely are.
Pyramids.
Yeah,
We
and
absolutely
Of
are.
and with that, I'll say thank you so much for joining me on this chat, and thank you for joining us. And check out some of Will's work and things that we'll be up to. And yes, lots of love from me, and speak to you soon.
Amazing.
None of those who have walked the path of goodness have had it easy.
Indeed. I often reflect on that very thing. For why should it be, right? It's as
Mm-hmm.
if we're only meant to be in the lesson for the lesson to really mean what it means.
Mm-hmm.
Because without that struggle, you know what I mean? But it also says there's a path of full and utter easement, you know what I mean? And it's that we wave in and out of as we search. Because you can hit that stream and you know what I mean? Move
Right,
really fast when you're aligned with it, I feel. But then like
right.
you were saying, there can be this idea or at least inclination of interference patterns, but
Mm-hmm.
also those are just the echo of everything else. Like if you're really stirring stuff up, we have to expect that, right?